Welcome back to Hardball. How does Herman Cain plot a course to the Republican nomination? Does he have a real shot, in fact? A lot of people are asking themselves that question after yesterday's big surprise result of our own NBC Wall Street Journal poll. After all this talk and buzz and straw votes, here's a real national poll. We think the best poll there is. Now showing Herman Cain, look at him, up from 5% up to 27%, while Mitt Romney frozen there at 23rd. 2 months ago, nothing has changed. Rick Perry's support has gone way down from 38% down to 16%. Everything's moving except Romney staying still, and Cain is rising. So it's clearly on the rise. But is this just the latest in a long line of Republican contenders who have taken the anti-Romney mantle for a brief period only to lose it? Past examples, of course, include Donald Trump, Michelle Bachmann, and, of course, Rick Perry most recently. In fact, if you look at the poll between August and October, Rick Perry lost 22 percentage points, while Herman Cain basically gained back that 22, took it away from him. Is Cain got the staying power? What is his game plan for actually winning the nomination? We've got an expert here right now, Michael Steele at MSNBC, political analyst, of course, the former RNC chair, and another expert who's independent and a great journalist, of course, Howard Fineman, editorial director for Huffington Post. Now, I want you to start, Michael, from the inside.
Sure.
I want the outside view from Howard. He always has a notebook open for this. If you look at the fact that all this is coming pretty quickly now.
Sure.
I mean, we're halfway through October. November, December, then the game's up.
That's right.
So he has to have a plan to win the Iowa caucuses, probably win or do very well, do decently well in New Hampshire, and then perhaps have to win by South Carolina, or at least compete. Tell me how you would take these bulbous poll numbers and apply that and get it going on the ground in Iowa to start with.
Well, I think that first off, you got to, right now the Cain campaign is doing sort of the holy crap. Okay, this thing is really beginning to gel for us. And so there's a little bit of shell shock there, but I think the reality for him right now is to get off the book tour and to really get on the ground in at least one of those two states, because if he posts very well, like in an Iowa or New Hampshire, then he locks in that vote. And that's what the voters are saying right now. We like you enough that we're prepared to lock in with you and take this ride. And I think not so much necessarily for the nomination, but at least the number 2 spot. I think you...
Okay, well, let's talk about number 2 in 2 minutes. In the first minute, Howard, here's the question. Can he pull a Huckabee in Iowa? Without a whole lot of ground game, can he win that thing?
Well, he's as eloquent as Mike Huckabee. I saw Herman Cain in front of the New Hampshire legislature yesterday, and he hit it out of the park. He was quoting from the book of Ronald, chapter and verse, as in Ronald Reagan. He talked about live free or die. He hit every chord of the New Hampshire conservative heart, but he doesn't have an organization. He doesn't really have one in Iowa. He doesn't really have one in New Hampshire. I mean, this is the point where anybody who is not signed up has to get signed up. And talking to people, Republicans of all across the board in New Hampshire the previous couple days, I didn't hear any big organization for Herman Cain getting out there. That's the problem. Now, Mitt Romney has got big numbers in New Hampshire, but as somebody pointed out to me, all of Romney's road signs are on the highways. They're not on people's lawns. So, that matters. People aren't putting the signs on their lawns, okay? So there's the lawn factor. Herman Cain's got to get some signs on some lawns in Iowa and New Hampshire, and he's got to do it fast. I haven't seen it yet.
Can I ask an existential question?
Sure.
I mean, you're African-American, you're in a party that doesn't have a whole lot of African-Americans, so I'm not going to play the umpire and say it can't happen. I am skeptical, though, of his success in that party, your party. Now, here's the question. Why wouldn't he go for it? Sure, he's got a book tour. He'll have a bigger book tour if he gets to be a nominee.
Right.
Why doesn't he say, okay, I didn't think this would happen. It's found money. It's like guys like me get on television. Hey, I'm on. It's time to do it right. It's time to learn the business. Why doesn't he learn how to be an organizational politician?
I think he will. I think right now that there are people who are going to be lining up. Certainly some of the political intelligentsia who wants to work on this campaign, be a part of this.
Is he a good bet?
I think he is a good bet. I'd go long on Cain right now. I wouldn't short him like you could short some of the others.
Would the fallback be he gets the VP?
Absolutely. I think the base right now has found the guy that they've connected with the most, more than the others.
That's for sure.
And I think right now with his plan out, his 999, he's got to come correct on that. He's got to be able to defend that and really push on that. But I think the base is kind of locked in on this guy, and they like him. And if Romney is the go-to for the nomination, then Herman Cain is the guy who gets.
I got to ask the race question because it's a couple, not because I like, but it's America after all. Tim Scott, South Carolina. You've got Alan West. You certainly had J.C. years ago. J.C. Watts. Republicans will vote for African Americans who agree with them on policy. If they're ideological.
Sure.
Right. But will they do it for president?
Oh, I think they will. I think they will. I think that dynamic, it's going to be tested.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be tested. But I think Herman Cain has put the seeds in place. Now he's got to germinate it by putting the organization together.
Let's see if we can do it. Here's Cain. Where does Cain's support come from? Well, according to the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, fascinating numbers here. He has more support from people who say they're highly interested in the campaign. In other words, intense conservatives. People over 55. That's interesting. Men. This is a conservative profile. People with college degrees, Tea Party supporters, people who identify themselves as very conservative. Let me go to Howard here. And Romney supporters, on the other end, tend to be liberals. They consider themselves to be less interested. Women, not less interested in women, but women, non-Tea Party Republicans, and moderate or liberal Republicans. So, Howard, this is so interesting. This is what you might expect. He's the Tea Party candidate. He's won what I call the Western Conference, where Romney wins the Eastern Conference.
Yes, and by the way, that description of Cain's supporters was basically the floor of the New Hampshire legislature, which has turned very Republican in the last year or so.
Oh, really?
They're all 55-year-old guys, with weird sports coats and flat-top haircuts. That's to generalize only slightly. But the problem that I think that Herman Cain has got is not race. It's the fact that 999 is very controversial because of sales taxes and because he keeps saying, whenever he's asked how he's going to solve a problem in specific, he keeps saying, I'll turn to my advisors. I'll turn to my group of advisors. Who are those advisors? It all seems kind of on the fly. It seems a little too on the fly. He's not only got to get an organization, he's got to get some substance.
Okay, let's teach the people. Let's learn some things here myself. The New York Times describes Cain's 9-9 plan as little more than a sketch of what would be a radical and complex overhaul of the tax system. In developing it, Mr. McCain relied heavily on Rich Lowry, whom he calls his lead economist. Mr. Lowry is an investment advisor at a Wells Fargo office in Pepper Pike, Ohio. Well, they can put that down, or they want in the New York Times. My question is the Republican Party ready to shift our tax burden from income for personal into our taxes you and I pay and corporate income taxes over to the consumer? I think they might. It's a more regressive tax. It hits the little people more. Are they that cynical to say, yeah, let's lay more tax burden on little people?
I don't think they are, and I think that's the rub. And I think Howard's right on that point there. I think ultimately that's the rub. When you look at a state like New Hampshire that does not have a sales tax, all of a sudden you're going to impose a federally imposed 9% sales tax. That is going to be hard to swallow for a lot of folks.
They don't have any taxes in New Hampshire.
Right, exactly. So I'm sitting here thinking that, the excitement that's been generated by Herman has not necessarily broken down into the meat of his proposals. Yeah. And so we'll see whether or not he can. Well,
that will be Howard. That will be an acid test when people begin to take his program seriously. They mean they're taking him seriously as an actual possible president, not just a fun way of not voting for Mitt.
Right, and that's what's going to happen over the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to, the way this campaign has been run, everybody gets a couple of weeks. They go in they sort of get chopped up in the meat grinder and come back out the other side. If they're still standing, fine. None of them has so far. And Mitt Romney had 23% before, still has 23%. He's the only constant, he's the only sort of constant in the race at this point.
And because he's a constant, that means he's got a lock.
Let me try this. If you take half the country's Republican, that's 23% of 50. That's about he'll get 11.5% going into the general election, right? Yeah, okay, I'm just kidding. Howard, now it could be. Anyway,
Howard is funny man.
I guess Obama about 87.5%. Anyway, thank you, Howard Fineman. Thank you, Michael Steele.